Huge guest on today's show, Robbie Hummel. We all know him. He joins the show to talk Michigan State basketball. What's the most perplexing part about this Spartan team? Does Tom Izzo have any regrets? And who would win a game, 5 Tyson Walkers or 5 Zach Edeys? All that and a ton more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube. And if you ever want to reach out to the show, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. All right, that's enough of the housekeeping. We all know why you're here. You want to hear from Robbie Hummel, so let's get to him right now. Folks, when I was thinking to myself, who isn't working hard enough this college basketball season? I thought of the only guy that's working 7 days a week, and I said, yeah, let's just beat the brakes off him some more. It's Robbie Hummel of NBC, Fox, Big Ten Network, and if you tune in at the right time, probably, you can see him on Sky Sports overseas. This guy is a dog. Robbie, thank you so much for working us into your insane schedule. How you doing, man?
No problem. I'm doing good, and actually had a pretty light week. I was at Michigan State earlier. Ended up having to fill in. Bill Rafter was supposed to do the Purdue-Rutgers game last night, but couldn't get there,
Gotcha.
So I ended up doing it. Which I've done Purdue so much this year that the prep is pretty much zero at this point for them. I think I've seen every game and called like 16 of their games. So
Wow.
Which is a lot. But yeah, I'm doing good, and yeah, happy to be on here.
Now, you just mentioned, and of course, we all saw on Tuesday you did the Michigan State game, and hey, that didn't go so well over here. So we're going to start this off with the vaguest question possible, the most open-ended question possible. When you watch Michigan State basketball, Robbie, you see blank. You can take that any way you want.
I see inconsistency. I think that's just the word that comes to mind with this team for everyone that's not named Tyson Walker. Everybody else, yeah. I don't understand Malik Hall.
Okay.
And he ended up getting it, he ended up having a pretty, I think he finished with 16 points. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand why there are times where I think, man, he is an all Big Ten player. And then there's the Minnesota game. There's the Northwestern game where he takes 4 shots. Or the first half, he's just not involved, in the loss against Iowa. I don't understand that. I don't understand why A.J. Hoggard is just missing layups. And, I think he's done some other things okay. I think he's pushed the ball. You look at his assist to turnover ratio, it's been good. Mm-hmm. But those are your seniors. Like, those are the guys that you need to be able to say, I can count on them every game to know that they're going to come out and bring it. And for whatever reason, you look at those two guys. Jay Nakins has at times been a little bit up and down. He was not good against Iowa. The center position has not been good really all season long. Tyson Walker has been the one guy where I'm like, I know when I watch Michigan State, he is going to, for the most part, be there. And outside of the Penn State game, he has. And the good thing for Michigan State was in that game in State College that everybody else was really good that night. So inconsistency has been the theme. They could not keep Iowa out of the paint. And I was impressed with the way Iowa played. I mean, they just the cutting, the ability to score it inside the 3-point arc. They play with tempo. They were fun to watch. They were fun to watch against Wisconsin, and they've got a massive opportunity Saturday against an Illinois team that really needs a win.
And, I mean, obviously, you just named a bunch. We've been talking about a bunch of perplexing things with this team throughout the whole week. But what is the most perplexing thing to you? Is it specifically a single player? Is it the fact that Xavier Booker seems to be doing okay, and then he gets zeroed out in second halves? But if you could just pull one single thing, like, what is the biggest head scratcher then, in your opinion?
That's a good question.
There's a great list of options.
Yeah, there is. There really is. I thought Xavier Booker he gave some positive minutes in the first half. I thought we might see him. But I know that there was the breakdown. Tyson Walker's man set a ball screen and on Xavier Booker, and he kind of got caught up in it. I thought was an easy switch for Walker, but it looked like Tom Izzo was mad at Xavier Booker. So I don't know if he maybe wanted him to go under. You never know in those situations how early the screen was called out, if Booker ever heard it. If, guards aren't always great at communicating when their man is setting the screen. They're used to getting over the top. They're used to guarding the ball screen. They're not used to guarding the guy that's setting the ball screen. So that maybe that was why he didn't play more. I don't know. Most confounding about Michigan State. That's a good question.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah.
I just think their offensive inconsistencies, their defense for the most part has I think been solid. Their offensive kind of lulls at times. Personnel wise, there's a lot we could go with. We could go with Hogard, we could go with Hall, we could go with Akins, we could go with the centers. There's a lot of places we could go, but I don't even know where to pick. All of the above.
Maybe that's just the answer. Is that like there is no clear-cut answer?
All of those things in there, and maybe just the bizarro world they live in. They've taken care of the ball, which has been something they haven't done in years past. They're not a good rebounding team, although they've been better, I think, in conference play on the defensive glass. But seeing a Michigan State team that's not just dominant on the offensive glass is so weird to me, because I understand what our practices used to look like in the days leading up to playing Michigan State. There was two things we worked on. Transition defense, because we knew that guys like Kalen Lucas and Corey Lucius were just going to be bringing it, and the defensive glass, because we knew if we did those two things, regardless of the rest of the things we did in the game, we would give ourselves a chance to win. And, you could get embarrassed against Michigan State's teams in the late 2000s and early 2010s. If you didn't rebound the basketball, it could be an embarrassing game. And it's not like that now. Their personnel is not physical like that anymore. It's just kind of a bizarro world to watch Michigan State play and see some of the strengths of their team and some of their weaknesses.
That goes right into where I want to take this conversation next perfectly. Sean, he is a listener of the pod, great friend of the program here. He wrote in anonymous note topic, maybe for podcast in the future. I just said anonymous and I just said his name. So sorry about that, Sean. Anyway, 5 years ago, MSU basketball bullies this team all over the court. 10 years ago, puts this team in the hospital. 15 years ago, puts this team in the morgue. Like, I know I'm putting you in an awkward spot. Trying to goad you into saying, hey, this team is soft. I'm sure you could dress it up a little better than that. But do you think that there's some truth to that? Like, this has been a different identity of Michigan State than we're used to? Or is this just us Michigan State fans being a little too extreme, a little too hard on our team? Based on what you just said, sounds like, things have changed with Michigan State's DNA the last 5, 10, 15 years.
I think it's more so in Michigan State's personnel. I just look at Carson Cooper's got some size, but he's not physically intimidating. I think Monty Sissoko plays hard, but he should probably be your backup big. Kohler is a guy that can score, but he doesn't intimidate. I think about the teams that I played against, and like my freshman and sophomore year, you're talking about Michigan State having Drew Namick, Marquise Gray, Goran Suton. Draymond Green was a freshman my sophomore year. Raymar Morgan is like playing the 3. He's like 6'7" or 6'8" and like a linebacker. You've got really physically imposing athletes that are able to bring the fight to you. And I just look at the front court for Michigan State, and Malik Hall is more of a skilled guy with his turnaround jumper, ability to play on the perimeter. Jaden Akins is just 6'4", 190. He's playing the 3. So you look at just kind of how and look, the game has changed. Like you've got to be able to shoot threes. I think stretch 5s are definitely effective. Stretch 4s are certainly effective. So it's not the same time period, but I do think that Tom Izzo has probably recruited a different type of big, and part of that is the game has changed. We gotta pivot, but they don't have the same level. Like I think of Houston. Houston is a good team that I would say that's how Michigan State used to rebound. That's what they used to look like on the glass. And look at Houston's personnel. Like they're built to be that way. I don't really think Michigan State is built to play like that anymore.
just like a team full of guys that could play running back in the NFL, just chiseled dogs, if you will. So,
but look at like Purdue now. When I was in
Yeah.
college, we were trying to survive on the glass. I was playing the 4. Jawan Johnson's playing the 5. You know, Chris Kramer would have been our small forward. We were just trying to hang in. Now Purdue like overwhelms you rebounding. They just crush you on the glass. They're like Michigan State was when I was playing, and that's kind of flipped.
Fun. Actually, no, not fun whatsoever. Plenty more to come here with Robbie Hummel, but first you need to talk your ear off about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are just the right fit. That's why you got to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and, my favorite part, for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That is 1 billion with a B, which makes it the best place to find hires. It gives you the access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process super easy and intuitive. Hiring is so easy that, hey, with that many quality candidates, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time to hire or resource that hire. So join the 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they apply. If there's one topic that we've cried about the most here on this podcast, it is the use of the transfer portal. And I think that also reflects a lot of the fan base is that, hey, you probably should have gotten a center. Probably should have seen that this isn't going to be it here. So you're going to be our mole here, Robbie, because when you're talking with Tom Izzo before this game, trying to get the scoop on what he's feeling about this season here, do you think he's letting on any regret of how he handled the offseason, or do you get the sense that he wouldn't change anything if he can go back in time?
Yeah, I mean, he's never let on that he regrets not hitting the portal, but I don't think that that's something that he would tell the TV crew. I think that he wishes that the guys that he had were more effective. I'm sure he wishes that Jackson Kohler didn't break his foot.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wishes that Xavier Booker was more physical, because I do think that there are going to be matchups where Booker is just so physically overwhelmed. And I think he's made strides from handling Big Ten level bigs. There was some games early where I thought, man, there's no way he can play against some of the big centers in this league, because he's just going to he'll get ducked into the basket. He's just, there's no way he can handle that. He weighs 190 pounds.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean he can't get there. I saw Jawan Johnson go from not really playing much as a freshman and kind of having the same build as Xavier Booker to being a really good player as a sophomore and a first team all league guy as a junior. So it's not like it can't happen. He's got to hit the weight room. And I think the scarier thing for Xavier Booker is his mentality has probably got to change from being a finesse big to trying to become a more physical player in probably the most physical league in college basketball. So I'm sure that Tom Izzo wants those guys to play better. He wants Carson Cooper to play better. He wants Mady Sissoko to play better. And Sissoko, it seems like, has been through a lot this season. I think that needs to be brought up, because he has dealt with a lot of things in his personal life, aside from living 3,000 miles from where he's from. And I felt that as an American playing overseas. So I know that those guys, they go through it. It's hard when you're away from home, away from your family. You have a great opportunity to get a college education, to play Big Ten basketball. Those are great things for those overseas players, but you're missing out on a lot of birthdays. You're missing out on seeing your friends and family. It's hard. And then on top of that, you add personal tragedy. So I feel for Mady Sissoko in that regard, but there's no question that the centers from Michigan State have just probably not been good enough this year.
I'm glad you brought up that perspective on Mady too, because look, we have honest dialogue here. We've been a little hard on Mady, of course, but we always try to bring it back to, hey, that's kind of on the coaching staff to go into this season knowing that you have this nucleus in the front court and you can change it. But okay, we've been just railing on that all season. But I'm glad that you brought that up about Mady and everything that can go on outside the court that can impact what goes on during a game. So now with that said, let's say that Izzo walked up to you and said, hey, Robbie, I know you're just, part of the TV crew. You can't really weigh in on the game here, but what would you change if you were Tom Izzo? Like, is there anything that you would change about how you run a game that you've seen as a consistent pattern from Izzo so far this year?
Well, Tom Izzo is a Hall of Famer,
Yeah,
so
he is.
he doesn't need any advice
It
from
doesn't stop
me.
us from criticizing him, though.
No, I
That's
hear
never
you.
stopped us.
I think that Michigan State is at its best when it's able to get out and run. Now, you've got to defensively rebound the basketball, and that's not saying anything that's like a transcendent statement. Like Michigan State has tried to run since the time that Tom Izzo got the job.
Yeah.
But you look at even their numbers from like a KenPom perspective, that's not like they're playing all that fast. They're 11th in tempo in conference play. Some of that is going to be because they have the slowest, I guess, defensive possessions in the league. They're 14th in terms of average defensive possession length.
Gotcha.
But their offense is only middle of the pack, 7th. They are up there in fast break points, but I think back to the Wisconsin game in East Lansing, and it was just a slog. And that's what Wisconsin does here, right? They're going to keep you in the half court. They have been in the past a team that doesn't go to the offensive boards, although Tyler Wall and Stephen Crow kind of crushed them on the glass that night. But it was just like there was no juice. There was no getting out and running. There was no stealing baskets. And again, I take it back to when I played. Even when we would score, it was comical the way that Kalen Lucas was bringing that down everybody's back. I mean, he's right on top of you. So it's like we would score and we would be you're sprinting back as fast as you can. It looked silly, but it was necessary because they were so good at getting that ball out of the basket and pushing it and at least taking your temperature. Can we get something out of this? And then if it's not, all right, then they were going to bring it out and they're going to run their stuff. So I just think that, if there was one thing I could say, we've got to be better on the defensive glass so that we can get out and run, because I think this team with their athletes is at their best when they are doing that.
What's just one piece of optimism here? Because obviously we've had a very honest chat. It has been an underwhelming season so far, but put a twinkle in our eye here, Robbie. What do you like from this Michigan State team if they are playing their best? Just something for us to smile about.
They have dynamic guards, and dynamic guards can win you games in the NCAA tournament. And I think that we saw that last year where they're knocking on the door of the Elite Eight if they can find a way against Kansas State. Hogard was great in that game. So when you've got Walker, you've got Akins, you've got Hogard, when those guys are playing their best, they can win you games in tournament play. So I think that's what I would fall back on. I just did XM radio with Ben Hartsock and Matt Schick, and we were talking about if you take away Purdue, what team in the league that's going to make the tournament? So that would be Illinois, Wisconsin, Northwestern, probably Michigan State, Nebraska, looks like most likely. I guess Iowa could be thrown in as a maybe because they have so many quad one games that they still have yet to play.
True.
They have to win them. They've won back-to-back quad one games, but they're going to have to probably beat Illinois maybe twice. They play them twice here in the last 4 or 5 games. But of those teams, who would you say you trust the most to win games in the tournament? And the two teams that kind of got brought up were, I guess, Nebraska and Michigan State. Nebraska because of the way they can shoot it, and the Spartans because of their guard play.
Gotcha.
Certainly those two teams I think could also lose in the first round, but they do have things that make them scary on a short prep in a 1-game situation. Whereas I think Northwestern, if they had Ty Berry, I would totally have thrown them into that discussion, but his knee injury kind of, I think, takes some of the juice away from them come the NCAA tournament. Illinois has been abysmal at closing games out. Their defense has kind of fallen off the cliff. The Spartans saw that. I mean, I checked the game. I did Xavier and who'd they play? Creighton on that Saturday that Michigan State was playing Illinois. And I got my rental car to drive to the airport. It was like 7 to play. Illinois is up 6 or 7. And I checked it again 4 minutes later, and it was like Michigan State up 5. Like that. And we saw what they did in State College a couple nights ago. The Nebraska game, they blew a 10-point lead and ended up winning in overtime. Their defense has been really, really poor, and some of their decision-making into the game is bad. Now, I think they're talented, and then Wisconsin has had their issues as well. So it's kind of an interesting group there if you take away Purdue of who can make noise in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if there's a right answer to that, but Michigan State was mentioned by one of us on the show as a team that they thought they could trust.
Be right back with Robbie Hummel. First, need to talk your ear off about the #1 sports book in the game, FanDuel. That's right. Now, hey, when Sunday's game tips off against Ohio State, you know that we will be having the props loaded into our phone over at FanDuel. They got the player props, rebounding props, number of threes, or something that I like to do for every game, correct score. oftentimes just like $1 to hopefully win somewhere in the ballpark of $200. Go ahead and spice up the game this Sunday. Or if you also want to bet on this hockey team that we have here in East Lansing, Michigan State right now 6th best odds to win the national championship at 11-1. If we're feeling good about our Michigan State hockey team, go ahead, mosey on over to FanDuel and place that wager. And if you're a new customer, it gets even sweeter because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players this season too, with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. It's FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We're in lockstep. We're in lockstep because that was my next question. Is Purdue the only bastion of hope in the NCAA tournament? But you just answered that. So we're going to jump right ahead here, Robbie.
Well, I will say before we go on, I do, Illinois is talented.
Yeah.
They just have some warts where it's like, man, they just don't close games down. But their talent is pretty high. They do have a talented group.
And it's just like their recent track record in the tournament, too. When you think all right, they got a good team. This is the year they make the second weekend. And then there they go. First round, second round, they're out of here. Robbie, this is a new segment on this podcast. It's called Nepotism Mailbag here because, look, I'm a huge fan of yours. My brother's a huge fan of yours. My dad is a huge fan of yours. So I sent them both a text. Hey, talking to Robbie Hummel in an hour. Let me know if you have any questions for him. So my brother wrote in 2 questions, my dad as well. Now, this really doesn't have anything to do with Michigan State to start. But the first question is for my brother. When he was in his prime, you, Robbie, if you were to play one-on-one against Zach Edeys today up to 11, what would the final score be?
That's a good question. I would have no ability to guard him once he got into the paint. He's 7'4". I'd have to. Is it make it take it? Because he could beat me 11-0 if he got the ball.
Yeah, let's do make it take it. Yeah, make it take it. Yeah.
Man, I guess I would have the advantage on the perimeter making shots. But even if I drive by him, I think Edeys been really good this year. When he gets beat off the dribble by guards, it's still putting that thing on the glass. He's been a much improved defensive player over the last 2 years. I'll say he beats me 11-8.
Okay.
he is the. I'm gonna hope I can make some jumpers. Make some twos, trade twos for ones. But he's a beast, man. He's probably right now. I think he's the second best player to ever play at Purdue. And if they make a deep run, he could perhaps surpass Glenn Robinson. But Big Dog was like ridiculous. He's 30 a game, 1,000 points in a season. The number 1 pick in the draft. He's the reason for the rookie scale because he got so paid coming out of college that the NBA was like, all right, we gotta get a handle on this. This dude's making $80 million coming out of college. That's going to be a tough trend to follow as this progresses. So he's the reason for the rookie scale. And just the way the dominance athletically, the shooting. Glenn Robinson is an iconic college player, but I think Edey, if he's going to be the 2-time national player of the year, that puts him in a group of like Ralph Sampson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, maybe Bill Walton. That's pretty rare air. And he just, I think he just had a stat that was broken where he's 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and a certain number of blocks. The only 2 people that have done that are David Robinson and Patrick Ewing. So when you're putting him in people with people like that, it's pretty ridiculous. He is truly a generational player in this league.
But 11-8, so you cover 3.5. So that's good.
There you go. I'm just, they could be 11-0 if he gets the ball first, but hopefully I can at least get a couple stops and make a couple threes.
Question number 2, who would win a game? A team full of Tyson Walkers or a team full of Zach Edeys? Just a 40-minute game, 5 Walkers versus 5 Edeys.
Man, you're talking about the biggest, most dominant player in college hoops going against one of the, I would say, the slimmest but toughest, like pound for pound little guys in college basketball. I guess it depends. What's Tyson Walker shooting like? If you're trading threes for twos, that would be pretty good. But throwing it inside, those post doubles coming from what's Tyson Walker, 6 foot maybe?
That's a generous 6 foot. Yeah, that's a 6 foot and 2 pairs of socks and 1 pair of shoes.
Yeah. And I love Tyson Walker, but man, they're just going to have. He better make a lot of threes. He better make a lot of threes. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day for the fighting Tyson Walkers.
And 2 questions coming from my dad here. Favorite Breslin memory and best game you've ever called. We could start with favorite Breslin memory if one sticks out amongst the others.
Favorite Breslin memory for myself, or like just in terms of watching?
Even
or...
even if it's just watching or the atmosphere or one that you've played in.
So my freshman year, I got really sick we flew into East Lansing and we practiced at the Breslin Center. And I remember walking on the floor and seeing like the plaque that it's the Final Four floor that they had purchased, which is really cool, from when Mateen Cleaves and those guys went. And I got really sick, threw up at the Breslin Center, and was as sick as I've ever been. It was one of those things where I was throwing up all night. I'd wake up, I was sweating, like I was just soaked. Then I'd take all the covers off, I'm freezing, like that was the way. It was a really, really bad night. So I didn't play. But I went to the game, which is bizarre. You'd think they would have just left me at the hotel. So I'm sitting on the bench, and I feel awful. I don't play in the game. And I just remember the atmosphere was so crazy. And I was blown away. It was our first Big Ten road game of the season. So it was my first Big Ten road trip. And I think we'd played at Missouri, which was an okay atmosphere. We played at Clemson in the Big Ten AC Challenge, which was pretty wild as well because they had a pretty good team. But to see the Breslin Center and the first basket when they'd pop the bags and throw them up, I was like, holy shit. Like it is really, really loud in here. And that was my first memory of being there. And then we won there my junior year. Kalen Lucas had sprained his ankle. You guys were kind of in control of the league. And then you lost 3 straight, the third being to us. And it was a massive game. Like there was a snowstorm, but it was still a great crowd. Mm-hmm. And it was Lavin and Musburger. And Erin Andrews might have been on that game because she was doing a lot of sidelines. So the crew was one of those kind of big time crews where you knew it was a big game when Musburger was in the building. And we ended up, we had a big lead. Michigan State came storming back, made a big 3. I think Chris Allen made a big 3 to cut it to like 3 points. And then Antoine Moore just took the game over and dominated the last like 4 minutes of the game. Yeah. Every play, it was him scoring, him assisting, just gave him the ball and got out of the way. And to finally win there was such a cool feeling because you understood there weren't not just anybody was walking into that building and beating a team with Kalen Lucas and Darrell Summers and Chris Allen and Draymond Green. And like that team was stacked. Delvon Rowe, really good players, really, really good college team. They ended up going to the Final Four that year. So that's probably my favorite memory of playing there. Best game I've called there. The Tyson Walker game went over Purdue, was a pretty big time shot. The game wasn't great because it was like, I feel like it was like 61-58. I don't know if that was,
it was a slog.
It felt like it was kind of like one of those grinder games, but the shot was big time. I'm trying to think this is my first year calling Michigan State, and it was not a great game. I think about watching that on TV and seeing some of the great games that they've had over the last 10 years, and that probably didn't live up to that. I'm sure I've called some really good ones there, and I'm just blanking on, I guess I'll go with the Walker shot because it was an awesome ending to the game, but I have to have done a better game like that was 85-80, and it's just like you leave and you're like, man, that was high level. I'm sure that's been there, but I'm blanking on what that game is.
Well, thanks for not saying last Tuesday. We appreciate that.
That was not the best game I've called. No.
Well, thanks for throwing us a bone there at the end. Robbie, thank you so much for your time. I know we've gone a little over here, but awesome to chat with you. Really do appreciate you carving out time because, man, it seems like no one works harder than you during the college basketball season. So for you to even have time to read the DM saying, hey, want to join the show, and then to, by God, agree to it, I really cannot thank you enough. So
no problem. Hey, I got to do all this so I can play golf in the summertime, right?
There we go.
It is a long off season. You got April to November.
If for some reason you're in the Metro Detroit area, your 18 holes are on me, man. So, until then, hey, enjoy the rest of the season. We're going to enjoy watching you on TV. And folks, we will be back again Monday afternoon is going to be the next episode. But until then, take care of yourself this weekend. Love you all. Go Green.